Hi guys, Yvette here. Thanks for joining me. Flight Freedom 26. I've got some very intriguing information for you. Some of you might find it confronting, and I'm not trying to change anyone's beliefs, and I'm not saying that I'm right. I'm just here to show you what I've found, joining some dots and sharing my thoughts. We're going to start with Easter. In the Northern Hemisphere, the end of March to April is spring. For thousands of years, this change of seasons has been celebrated with a spring festival across the world throughout all the nations and cultures. It's still celebrated by the Abrahamic religions, but given different names to mask its origins and deceive the population. So the rulers can lead us to pay homage to deities which they worship and wish to please for the returned gift from their gods of prosperity for the new year, which used to begin at spring. For some cultures, it's the 1st of April, which became the month called Nisan, while for others it's the first new moon after the solar calendar's equinox. And before I get to the main point of this video, I'd like to give you some information to paint a picture so it all comes together in your own mind. And it's going to be a detailed picture. So who named it Easter anyway? And why a rabbit and eggs? Easter is the modern version of the name of a spring goddess. Across all cultures, people held a spring festival after the solar calendar spring equinox in March to encourage the goddess to replenish the land and people with fertility and renewal after the winter. The first full moon after the equinox is when Easter happens on the Gregorian calendar. In 325 AD, the First Council of Nicaea, with the advent of the Catholic Church, adapted the memory of Christ's crucifixion and resurrection to the pagan festival for the spring goddess to make it more acceptable across their empire and affiliates. Don't forget that pretty much all of the world was polytheistic. Rome and even mostly Roman priests of Israel were polytheistic. Different lands had a god of preference and governance or ownership, but all recognised many gods. Israel's spring festival is Purim, as in the story of Esther. I have videos about this if you haven't seen them. The spirit of Jezebel can be likened to this goddess. Lewdness, cross-dressing, sexual perversion, fornication and prostitution were all encouraged for the public and even apparent within the temples. So while researching the Book of Esther and the lack of evidence to support it as a true event historically, I found a lot of information linking the characters Mordecai and Esther to the deities Marduk and Asherah. Knowing the pagan influence in the old religions, I wanted to know the truth. There are many labels for these gods in different languages, so to get to the bottom of this rabbit hole, I determined to find evidence of the true identities of the highly honoured spring goddess and god of the ages. And yes, it does actually have something to do with what's going on in the world now. I found this from a Jewish website. Esther's name probably is derived from Ishtar, a Babylonian goddess, and Mordecai's name from Marduk, a Babylonian god. Some of the different cultural versions of the name are Eostri, Ostara, Esther, Ishtar, Inanna, Asherah. Think of estrogen, the female hormone. This is where that word came from. Different sources have different opinions about the Greek and Roman goddess of spring and fertility, so we won't go there tonight. It's possible that many names were given to each demigod, Nephilim, across all cultures, languages, religions, and eras of time and empires. Anyway, that's where the Easter Bunny and the giving of decorated eggs originated, symbols of fertility. While I show you how and when the spring festivals are celebrated, keep in mind that their dates are by their solar calendar according to their cultural traditions, not the heavenly calendar. I've got quite a lot to read here, so I'm only going to read what I've highlighted, and you can pause if you want to read it all. The earliest recorded New Year's festivity dates back some 4,000 years to ancient Babylon and was deeply intertwined with religion and mythology. The first new moon following the vernal equinox heralded the start of the year and represented the rebirth of the natural world. A massive religious festival called Akitu. Statues of gods were paraded through the streets, and through these rituals the Babylonians believed the world was symbolically cleansed and recreated by the gods in preparation for the new year and the return of spring. And then when the Julian calendar came out, they adapted it to that. So this Akitu festival and the Assyrian New Year in the spring, celebrated on the first day of April. The festival has its roots in the ancient Mesopotamian religion, and today Assyrians are predominantly Christian. Nisan is used for April, so the first of Nisan is April 1. The Assyrian and Babylonian Akitu festival has played a pivotal role in the development of theories of religion, myth, and ritual. It is certain to have played a pivotal role in the regular setting of an agenda, priorities, and in the overall advancement of Western civilization, as being one of the first regularly occurring forums where proposals for social maintenance or change could consistently be made and crucial issues readily addressed. The modern observance of Akitu began in the 1960s during the Assyrian intellectual renaissance. Due to political oppression, however, the celebrations were largely private until the 1990s. So the priest in Marduk's house would recite sad prayers with the other priests, and the people would answer with equally sad prayers, which expressed humanity's fear of the unknown. This fear of the unknown explains why the high priest would head to the Asagala every day asking for Marduk's forgiveness, begging him to protect Babylon, his holy city, and asking him to have favour on the city. So the god of Assyria was Marduk, and other names across other cultures. He was the main god, but there was extra grovelling in the spring so they didn't starve. Marduk was also known to the early Israelites as Baal. Esther, we'll call her Asherah because that's who she was to the early Israelites, was the female counterpart for assurance of fertility. Now I hope you don't get scared and run away or turn off or tune out, because this information I'm bringing you might actually answer some questions and nagging doubts about some of the Old Testament stories and what's been going on with the people of Israel all these centuries. That's why I couldn't let this go. Many scholars see evidence for Asherah being an individual goddess known to the Israelites. The Bible frequently addresses Asherah, and some passages clearly reference her as being a goddess. 1 Kings 18:19 states that Asherah had prophets in Tyre, just as the Canaanite god Baal had prophets. Despite these and other references associating Asherah with apostasy, there are multiple indications in biblical tradition that many in ancient Israel did regard Asherah's cult icon as an appropriate sacred symbol within the religion of. One of Asherah's sacred poles stood next to his altar at Bethel, and another one in the capital city of Samaria. I'm thinking that we need to be sure about which vowels we put between these letters. Archaeological discoveries indicated that, at least in the opinion of some ancient Israelites, the two of them were appropriately worshipped as a pair. Some inscriptions indicate that Asherah was his, and there's been evidence of sacrifices being made to her. Bull worship was common in many cultures. Some believe that Yahweh, the national god of the Israelites, was associated with or pictured as a sacred bull. Among the Canaanites, some of whom would become the Israelites, the bull was widely worshipped as the lunar bull. And I come across this. One of the facts that cannot be refuted is that Yahweh is a god who has a consort, a wife. That's Asherah. The biblical narrative, however, is not straightforward as it may seem, as it also includes reference to the Canaanite god El, whose name is directly referenced in Israel, he who struggles with God, or he who perseveres with God. El was the chief deity of the Canaanite pantheon, and the god who, according to the Bible, gave Yahweh authority over the Israelites. When the Most High, El, gave to the nations their inheritance, when he separated the sons of men, he fixed the bounds of the peoples according to the number of the sons of God. That's the fallen angels. For Yahweh's portion is his people, Jacob his allotted heritage. The Canaanites, like all ancient civilizations, worshipped many gods, but chief among them was the sky god El. In this passage from Deuteronomy, El gives each of the gods authority over a segment of the people of earth, and Yahweh is assigned to the Israelites, who in time will make him their supreme and only deity. But it is clear he existed beforehand as a lesser Canaanite god. Now another name, Hadad. It took me a while to find some information on this one, and it'll come up again later. God of weather and storms, storm god, symbolised by the bull, or wore a bull-horned headdress, the god Hadad. And we remember the story of the golden calf in Exodus. And we've got Zeus connected with the bull. Zeus was the Greek name equivalent of Baal, and then later when the Romans took over, they called him Zeus. Zeus Baal. Zeus and Baal were respected in their various regions as thunder god. Bull worship and sacrifice related to Baal features throughout the Bible. 1 Kings describes the official establishment of pagan Israelite worship before calves. I'm going off in a bit of a tangent here, because it's becoming pretty obvious that every mention of God in the Old Testament is not referring to the same God. There were many gods, and the stories were redacted to suit political and religious goals. Rather than admit the existence of multiple deities while converting the world to Roman version of monotheism, they just blurred the history. This also worked in their favour by creating the fear of a vengeful God so everyone would obey. Father in heaven doesn't require the shedding of blood for forgiveness. The people of the Old Testament only needed to listen to their God-given conscience, abandon their idols and pagan gods, and not follow a power-hungry false god with promises of land and wealth. No wonder Jesus came. Jesus forgave people when they turned from their sin. He didn't tell them to go and sacrifice something, and that was before he was sacrificed. He knew he was coming back. He proved that death isn't the end. He is the Creator, and he chooses to give us a new life because we have faith and love for him and do the right thing. We don't love the world or all the fake things in it. From the time of the ancient Israelites until now, the Jewish people have continued to maintain their pagan traditions. The people throughout history have been denied the truth of Jesus because the people who run the country still idolise and worship and depend on the gods of their ancestors. But all kinds of stuff will hit the fan in a big way real soon. Then they'll see the true Messiah at the end and fall to their knees. So who are these fake gods, and are they still around? Yes. I'm thinking that these pagan gods were the Nephilim giants, who were the offspring of the fallen angels, which took human women for wives. Genesis tells us they all drowned during the flood of Noah, but the wives of his sons could have carried Nephilim blood, as in Canaan. There's also Genesis 6:4. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them. The same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. See, it depends on how you read it. It does imply that before and after the flood, sons of God took daughters of men and produced giants. Satan wasn't locked up then. He could have easily recruited a second group of angels who didn't like humans being favoured by the Creator and muck up the world again. We know that David and others battled giants, and the bloodline still exists. They were only half human. They were big, powerful. They must have existed originally for people to believe in them. Then their spirits lived on. I'm thinking that people's lives and welfare was dependent on the character and moods of their governing deities. Like Og of Bashan, they ate a lot of meat and they expected to be worshipped. They lied about their true identities. In the Gospel of John, chapter 8, Jesus said to the Jews, I speak that which I have seen with my Father, and ye do that which ye have seen with your father. They answered and said unto him, Abraham is our father. Jesus said unto them, If ye were Abraham's children, you would do the works of Abraham. But now ye go about to kill me, a man that have told you the truth, which I have heard of God. This did not Abraham. Ye do the works of your father. Then they said to him, We are not born of fornication. We have one Father, which is God. Therefore Jesus said unto them, If God were your Father, then ye would love me. For I proceeded forth and came from God. Neither came I from myself, but he sent me. Why do you not understand my talk? Because you cannot hear my word. Ye are from your father the devil, and the lusts of your father you will do. He hath been a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, then speaketh he of his own, for he is a liar, and the father thereof. And because I tell you the truth, you believe me not. And about the sacrificing of animals, the writer of Hebrews said, For would they not then have ceased to be offered, because that the offerers once purged would have had no more conscience of sins? But in those sacrifices there is a remembrance again of sins every year. For it is impossible that the blood of bulls and goats should take away sins. It's impossible. And then Paul in Corinthians says, For we that are many are one bread and one body, because we are all partakers of one bread, that being Jesus. Behold, Israel, which is after the flesh. Are not they which eat of the sacrifices partakers of the altar? What say I then, that the idol is anything, or that which is sacrificed to idols is anything? Nay, but that the things which the Gentiles sacrifice, they sacrifice to devils, and not unto God. And I would not that ye should have fellowship with the devils. So in verse 18 he's saying, Israel, after the flesh, eat of the sacrifices. Is he referring to them as Gentiles? (21) You cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of devils. You cannot be partakers of the Lord's table and of the table of devils. And my words, yet they still ate the meat of animals sacrificed to false gods and idols. When you realise there is more than one God in the Old Testament, because the words God and Lord were titles, you can see the truth of many things and have more questions about the world then and now. Because the Jews refused Jesus, Satan could still have a firm grip on them through their pagan religious traditions and through the influence of demonic spirits. Because if you don't have the Holy Spirit, you're an open door to the spirits of evil. So back on track. The God of Israel. Same God, different names across cultures, languages, and eras of time. So I'm wondering, did one giant, maybe shape-shifting, offspring of a fallen angel, use his people to invade the territories of disagreeable ruling giants and remove the competition? But then that would suggest Moses was demonically possessed. That's a worry. I'm sorry to say that out loud. But I found this. Maybe you've seen it before. It's a sculpture by Michelangelo in Rome. You can clearly see horns on his head. That's Moses. So there's a bit to read here if you want to pause it. Moses is depicted with horns, which the biblical texts describe Moses as having only after the second giving of the law. And the authors of this essay further argue that both Paul and Moses experienced God directly. They state that the key emotion on Moses' face is awe at being face to face with the Creator. I don't know who those men are, but I don't see awe in his face. Looks like he's sort of accepting. So apparently it was common in Latin Christianity to portray these horns. Don't know anything about that. The depiction of a horned Moses stems from the description of Moses' face as cornuta, horned, in the Latin Vulgate translation of the passage found at Exodus chapter 34, specifically verses 29, 30 and 35, in which Moses returns to the people after receiving the commandments for the second time. When he knew not that his face was horned from the conversation of the Lord. Apparently the translation was difficult from the original Hebrew text, which often means horn. Also says how it's now interpreted to mean shining or emitting rays. But here's a painting. Now when you've got a painting, you've got more control, more leeway to flow. So you'd think if he was emitting rays, he'd have like a halo like in the old Renaissance paintings. And I don't know how I feel about that finger and thumb sticking up like a pair of horns either. Were the giants possessed, and did they even need to be, considering they were fathered by fallen angels? Reading again so far Leviticus and Deuteronomy from this perspective seems to reveal a plan. Some lands the Lord told Moses to leave alone when they were clearly governed by giants. We've had a look at information that gives us a name for the God of Israel and other nations: Mordecai, Marduk, Yahweh, Baal, Jupiter, Zeus and Hadad. All as the same entity, or of the same character at least. And Jesus called the father of the Jews the father of lies. We know from scriptures that the father of lies is Satan, and that our Father cannot lie. Satan uses his fallen followers and descendants to do his will. He owns them. We know Satan confronted Jesus centuries later, so why wouldn't other fallen sons of God be on earth? The God of thunder and lightning. He brings either rain or drought, renewal or desolation, prosperity or devastation. He is a jealous and vengeful warrior. He is cunning, manipulative. Through Moses he demanded that the people of each tribe of Israel only marry within their own family, or they'd lose their inheritance. He is likened to and portrayed as a bull. Sorry, I've typed that twice. His followers worshipped him through the idol of a bull or calf, and he expected sacrifices. Now the Jewish priests plan to sacrifice a red heifer, and the last time that happened was before the temple in Jerusalem was destroyed in 70 AD. Wikipedia says that ashes were still in use under Jeremiah III in the 4th century. Is it strange that they aren't letting the world know when the sacrifice will happen? Maybe they're keeping it a secret for security precautions. I'm sure they wouldn't want hordes of curious goyim flocking to the Mount of Olives and crashing the party, or enthusiastic animal rights protesters diminishing the sacredness of their sacrificial ritual. Of course, there is another meaningful date the deed could be done. By the Jewish calendar, their Passover date is Monday the 22nd of April at sunset until the evening of the 30th. The Seder feast will be the first night in Israel. That Monday will be the 13th of Adar by the heavenly calendar, the next day. Passover will be the 14th of Adar. Turns out that was originally called Marduk or Mordecai's Day. And we now know that this is the name of the God of Israel. The story of this can be found in the second book of Maccabees. And they all ordained by a common decree by no means to let this day pass without solemnity, but to celebrate the 13th day of the month of Adar, called in the Syrian language the day before Mordecai's day. 14th of Adar. That's their Purim festival. Mordecai. Now, where have we seen a ritual ceremony with an idol of a bull recently? It's not funny how they just put it in our face now. Okay, so I was looking for a particular name, Hadad, to be linked to this god who had everyone scared and submissive throughout history. Who is this eternal bully who's tainted and controlled humanity? You've probably worked that out. So here's the proof. Remember in the calendar video for March, I mentioned some numbers many of us have been repeatedly seeing. It's been a warning. Turns out it's not some blessing or coded sign of favour, like a silent alarm on replay from our Creator and Saviour. 111, Adad. It's a name. The same number in Greek is used to describe a particular kind of character and associated behaviours. Athemitos. Lawless, illegal, unlawful, criminal, lawless. A custom which is acceptable because it's accepted. To be used properly, not acceptable based on the prevailing custom or ordinary practice. The word's also used for abominable. So Hadad became known as the Akkadian, which was Assyrian and Babylonian god Adad. The bull was a symbolic animal. Hadad was equated with the Greek god Zeus and the Roman god Jupiter. Same entity, different names for different cultures. Hadad, an important northwest Semitic storm and fertility god, identical with the Akkadian weather god Adad. As a god of rain, thunder and fertility, Hadad is also related to the Babylonian Marduk. This is a spin out, isn't it? It's serious, but I'm not here for entertainment purposes. Same as the Egyptian god Set and the Greek god Zeus. So I've got this information from a few different sources. The name of Marduk. Adad, 111. This raises some questions. Who is this red heifer being sacrificed to? And are all the players aware? I wonder who will be invited. What and who are they calling on with this ritual invocation? Because that's what I suspect it is. Now thanks for the channel Wallytron 101. I found this website with a calendar of satanic rituals. The spring equinox by the solar calendar in March. Their spring festival, which is at the beginning of this video we talked about. So after the dates, the next column is the title of the celebration, what they gain from it and how they do it. I can't help it, I've got to say it, this is like a big FU to God. Good Friday. And then Passover for the Jewish calendar is the 22nd of April. You can see there next to my blue words what they'll be doing. May the 1st, Beltane, when they have big fire and other things that we probably don't want to imagine. And then April 30th, Ridmas Day. And I looked that up and it's actually, they call it the Feast of the Cross. It's like they're celebrating the crucifixion of Jesus. And on that date, you can see what they're going to do there. Maybe April 30th is also a candidate for the red heifer. So it seems that Israel's government's pretty determined in this current war. Maybe they're feeling confident in gaining supernatural assistance, and they're definitely expecting their Messiah to rise to power. So back to the number 111 of abominable lawlessness. Is the Mount of Olives the holy place? It's certainly one of them. Jesus spent some time there praying, escaping the constraints and frustrations of the city. He was betrayed there. He ascended from there, and Scripture says that's the destination of his touchdown in the future. Is the coming sacrifice the end times abomination which will bring desolation? I believe Daniel 9:27 refers to the sacrifice to Zeus in the temple before its destruction in 70 AD. That rendered the temple unclean, so the daily sacrifices stopped. But in Matthew 24, Jesus tells his disciples, "But he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all the nations, and then the end shall come. When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand." Those last words I've highlighted in red, that's directed to us. We are the readers. The disciples weren't reading these words. He said that to make sure it was recorded for us. And it's repeated in Mark 13. If you believe in the rapture of true and faithful believers before destruction, you may know that Matthew is written for the Jewish people, Mark is for those who need more refining, and Luke is for those deemed worthy to escape. Luke doesn't refer to Daniel's abomination of desolation. Instead, he says that not a hair on our head will perish. We need to be patient. So, what is the scriptural definition of an abomination? Abomination, to deprecate as an ill omen, exceptionally loathsome, hateful, sinful, wicked or vile. Many modern versions of the Bible translate it as detestable or loathsome. It is mainly used to denote idolatry, and in many other cases it refers to inherently evil. So it's a sinful, wicked, evil, idolatrous act which may be hidden through deception. And desolation laid to waste, devastated, deserted, deprived of inhabitants, destitute. To lay to waste, devastate, to deprive of inhabitants, depopulate. And devastate, as a verb, is to demolish or destroy, to ruin, to desecrate, to desolate, to waste, to lay waste. So putting this together, it's possible that the red heifer sacrifice on the Mount of Olives could be the abomination of desolation. 111 equals the lawless one. And now I'm remembering the Hebrew definition of 1111, the devastator, a Moabite king, and Moab is a part of the modern-day Jordan. At the moment they're helping the people who have nothing left, and also I noted that more than 97% of the current population of Jordan is Muslim. They aren't part of the Abrahamic Accords. Right now they're having Ramadan. And that's it. Thanks, guys. Hope you enjoyed the content. There's a lot to think about. If it's all a bit of a muddle, you might need to watch it again. Go back and go over the main points. Maybe I'll make a summary.